Out of Nehemiah 4 this morning, but I'm just going to take the opportunity to share a few words with you before we get into it. My wife always gets on to me. If I get something for the kids or get something for her or whoever, I can never hold on to it. I have to go ahead and give it to them early. If I get it for them for their birthday or whatever, I can't stand it. So I have to wait to the last minute. But what I come to tell you about all this is, I'm going to give you the best part right now, and then I'm going to feed you back up. I'm going to ask Nate to come up. We're just going to talk for just a second. The reason I asked Nate to come up is I want y'all to see the face of our youth. Not that he's our only youth. I just want you to see it as the face of our youth and what we battle daily. You know, and the things I'm going to be touching on is we as adults, we have more of a battle plan because of what? We've lived longer. We've seen things. But what is the one thing, Nate? Say I got something that I'm going to whoop you up, or I'm trying to knock the legs out from under you. What is the thing that you're looking for in this fight? Your weakness. He's going to look for my weakness. And that's a great thing because in any battle, you got to find the weakness. What is another thing that you look for?
Just probably size you up.
That's the key word. Size you up. In any battle we go into, what we're going to do? We're going to size up the situation. We're going to see. That's it, Nate. I just want y'all to remember, these guys, man, as Brother Buddy's bringing the word to them each week, we grow in them. They haven't experienced the things we've experienced. They don't have that knowledge of, let me go ahead and put it out there, they don't have the knowledge of defeat. You know what humbles a man? Getting whooped down. I remember a fight when I was a youth. There ain't nothing like getting your head knotted up. It'll make you humble. You'll remember that. If you don't remember nothing else, you'll remember them knots on the back of your head where that mug was holding you. But the thing about it is, when we get beat down sometimes, we're going to talk about Jerusalem. They got beat down. Just because I was running my mouth, I got beat down. What happened to them? They wasn't living for God no more. They done turned. So guess what? They got beat down too. But the thing about it is, what I want you to know is, when this great leader Nehemiah comes in here to restore this place, he's prayed up, he's studied up, and he knows the adversary. The adversary here is going to be the devil. And Brother Leslie said it Wednesday night, and I can't say it no better. He said, some days, Dave, man, I just feel like Satan's punching bag. He seems like he's coming at me at all different angles. You know what I mean? Just beating you up. Has anybody in here ever been defeated? This is what I'm telling you. I'm fixing to give you some word. I'm going to start with Hebrews. It said, let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering. For he who promises faithful. And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works. When I brought that Nate up here, what I want you to understand is we stir up good works. These youngins don't learn on their own. We teach them. We stir up that word. We invest in them. We grow them. We take our heartaches and where we failed in life and we grow them with it. Not forsaking the assembly of ourselves together as a manner of some, but exhorting one another. What does it mean to exhort one another? This is what I want to get into right here. Don't panic, sound the alarm. When we come up against the adversary, it ain't time to panic then. Because the fight's what? The fight's before us. So we need to be what? We need to be prepared before the fight happens with strong skills such as sizing up the situation, as Nate said, sizing up the opponent. How great of an opponent? What does this opponent know about me? Where has this opponent been? Well, I'm telling you what, the devil's been here since Adam and Eve, so guess what? He knows everything that's going on in our lives. He knows about us. But the thing we got to remember is not to panic, to be prepared. And how are you going to be prepared? By being studied up and prayed up. We're going to go into this book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah didn't do anything unless he was prayed up and studied up and ready. That's the key to all of it. Having a plan requires being studied up and prayed up. Just like Greg Carter's a great leader for our church, Nehemiah was a great leader. But what y'all think Nehemiah had around him when he went into Jerusalem with what God had laid on his heart. What you think the first thing he done was? He established people around him. Not only was he a great prayer, not only did he have that knowledge of God, he had that word from God in his heart, and he knew what he was supposed to be doing, but what you think he had to do first? He went in there and seeked people of like mind to keep him lifted up, to keep him on the right task. This is what we're going to do. We're not going to panic. We're just going to sound the alarm. And the great thing about it is in Walkerville, and I'm going to come back to this at the end of it, but this is what I want you to know right now. Behind Greg Carter is some good people that's working hard that y'all never see. And just like in the time of Nehemiah, when they were spread out in the walls of Jerusalem, they were spread thin. There wasn't that many of them. They were spread thin, but they had a trumpeter. When that trumpeter blew that trumpet, everybody came. Or they come to where the fight was. They didn't wait. If the trumpet blew and the wall was weak over here, they knew where that trumpet was. They come to it. Stephanie back there, that's what she does for us. She blows that trumpet. If you got something going on in your life, you ain't got to give every detail of it, but you tell enough people that you have enough transparency in your life to let them know that you're struggling. You don't wait till you're done whoop like I was talking about before. You don't wait till your head's swole up. When you have an option, you call the fight into it. One of the things I was going to touch on, Nate, is there a man in here that would lay down his life for you? Your daddy. Your daddy would lay down his life for you. But you got me on that, baby. Nobody with the exception of his daddy is what he's saying. But what I come to tell you is Jesus Christ already laid down his life. That first song, or the second song, Victory in Jesus, that's what I'm here to tell you about this morning. We can have victory, but we have to stay prayed up, studied up. We got to know when God's speaking to us. We got to know that when he calls us to move, we're not doing that on our own. And to do that, you have to have a relationship. I got a quick comparison right here. I'm going to compare Nehemiah. And I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all, the youth, and tell your kids, read Nehemiah. They think these bums in the NFL's doing something? Read Nehemiah. Nehemiah is a leader. He's a God-fearing leader. But Nehemiah was anchored in prayer, so he knew the voice of the Lord. That's what I'm saying. He knew what God was telling him to do. Just as Greg is faithful in prayer at Walkerville. Greg has to be prayed up to know how to help us. Nehemiah was a high-ranking official. He was a cupbearer for the king. And back in that day, you couldn't have a better job than that. Do you think he was out there with the peons and the other people? He was partaking of whatever the king had. Whatever the king's offering was, that was him. But you know what? When God laid that burden in his heart, he moved on. He gave that up because he had such a love for the people. He had a love for Christ that he was going to bear that cross. Do we know what it means to bear a cross? That means giving up something that you want someday to do what Christ has called you to do. You bear that cross. Brother Greg, you think of him. He was at Gilman Paper Products. On the road to being in management. God called him. He never knew he'd be standing here at Walkerville bringing us the message. But you know what? God laid that on his heart. Here he is, and he's doing the best he can with it. And we need to be praying for him. When Nehemiah, he got to Jerusalem, he had to survey the scene. And I wasn't here when Brother Greg got to Walkerville. But one of the things Nehemiah did, the first time he was there, he took time to go around, to meet the people, to see what was going on. And I'm sure Greg done the same thing. You know, it's hard for us to be a leader, to minister to people, or if we don't know our people. So I'm telling you, get to know your people. You won't have to panic. There'll be somebody there for you. And I'll go ahead and tell you, you can say, well, I don't want people knowing what's going to happen or what's going on in my life. They're going to know anyway. It's better to do controlled knowledge. And I don't care if I tell 10 people and only 2 of them pray for me. You know what I got? I got 2 people praying for me. The 10 can run, or the other 8 can run their mouth. That's fine. But I know I got two people praying for me, lifting me up. All right, I got to get on with the message or we won't ever get out of here. It's a little background. Because of Israel's disobedience, the walls of Jerusalem were torn down. The city was ravaged, held captive for over 100 years. Can you imagine that? Have y'all been defeated in your life and it seems like 100 years? They're just defeat. Like every time you turn, you get knocked back down. This is what the people of Jerusalem's going through. They got enemies all the way around them. North, south, east, and west. And Nehemiah knows this going into this. Nehemiah became a burden for these people. He pled on behalf of his people, prayed for favor of the Lord, and asked for permission from the king to go rebuild the walls. Imagine this man, a cupbearer for the king, a trusted employee, if you will. This is the Persian king. He's like dominating. But here this man is, Nehemiah, a cupbearer, going to go to this man. Well, the man actually acknowledges that he can see the hurt in his heart that Nehemiah has for these people. So the king asks him first, what's going on? Nehemiah tells him. But before Nehemiah opens his mouth, he prays for God to give him the right words to tell the king. Then he moves on, proceeding to tell the king what's on his mind. So as it was, the king gave him what he needed because he prayed about it. The king was just a pawn in this. The king has nothing to do with this. This king was in control. God, our king, was in control. The king of Persia, he was just a pawn in this. So Nehemiah sets out on his journey, and the king provides the provisions all the way. He's got a pass to get through everything. And when he gets there, he's got the resources he needs. In today's society, we are encouraged to tear down walls, but I want to encourage you to build up walls. Just as God provided a place for the Jewish people to settle, He has provided for us as well, and we must guard against the wiles of the devil. In the story of Nehemiah, one of the strongest foes was Sanballat. And the meaning of Sanballat means, may sin give him life. I'm going to say that again. May sin give him life. Because you know what we do in our walk? We give sin life. And that's the reason I want to bring out this one character in this story is, I'm going to read a quote Nick shared with us. It says, temptation usually comes in through a door that has deliberately been left open. And this allows unclean thoughts. How many of you just get on Facebook sometimes, you scrolling through there just minding your own business, you see an old friend from school. You remember all them days of whatever you was doing that probably wasn't godly, but it jars that. We just opened that door right back up. That wall I'm encouraging you to build around that kind of stuff. Don't let those impure thoughts come into your mind. But I'm going to be reading from chapter 4, 1 through 5 right here. But before I do that, I'm just going to ask God to give us the words here. Father, we come to you humble, dear Lord, and I just pray, dear Lord, as we read this word, dear Lord, I just pray that we seek it. We seek the knowledge, dear Lord. We get everything, every kernel of it, dear Lord. I pray we just take in this morning. And we take these kernels in, dear Lord. I just pray that we can go out into the world and sow these words, dear Lord. Just sow them and have a mighty harvest for you. We love you this morning and we thank you in Christ's name. Amen. If y'all will stand, we're going to read, I'm going to read chapter 4, 1 through 5. But so it happened, when Sanballat heard that they were rebuilding the walls, that he was furious and very indignant, and mocked the Jews. He spoke before his brethren in the army of Samurai and said, what are these feeble Jews doing? Will they fortify themselves? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they complete it in a day? Will they revive the stones, the heaps of rubbish, stones that have been burned? You can be seated. Do you have people in your life sometimes that torment you? They just antagonize you. This is what he's referring to as Sanballat. But I want you to get out of this what I went before you before and said, may sin give him life. This is what I want you to get out of this. This is where Nehemiah was at. Nehemiah said, hear, O God, for we are despised. Turn their reproach on their heads, and give them as plunder to the land of captivity. Do not covet their iniquity, and do not let their sin be blotted out before you, for they have provoked you to anger before the builders. What is Nehemiah doing there? He's turning it over to God. He's seeking. He's seeking that answer. And that's too what we got to do. Nehemiah encountered Sanballat on several occasions, but he never gave to the ridicule and threats. He refused to let Sanballat have the stronghold in his life. Through prayer, God gives Nehemiah the strength and discernment he needs as well. Strength and discernment. To have discernment, we got to know what? We got to have knowledge. We got to have knowledge of the enemy. We got to have knowledge of what we're facing. As Nate said, we got to size up the situation. But to know, we got to have knowledge of that opponent. Nehemiah did not give sin power. He did not entertain Sanballat. Had he even entertained Sanballat with this antagonism and this ridicule, if he'd have just said, dang man, he's on his heart, I better. He never did that. He never even let it enter his mind because what? He was focused on what God had laid on his heart. He didn't have to listen to ridicule. But the thing about it is when Sanballat's coming with him, all this ridicule and stuff, he's talking about him, Nehemiah don't give in to it. He doesn't even entertain it for a minute. People, we empower sin when we entertain it. Like I was speaking of earlier, if you go back to just a picture you've seen that brings back a flash of a memory, you're empowering that. You're empowering that thought process because you can't what? Can you just push it away then? There's no way. Once it's brought up to that melon, you can't just get rid of it. But this is what Nehemiah was saying here. He didn't even entertain the ridicule. He didn't care. He knew what he was there for. He knew God had told him to be there, and he wasn't playing with him. So we go on to verse 6 and says, so we built a wall, and the entire wall was joined together half its height. For the people had a mind to work. Now it happened when Sanballat, Tobiah, Arabs, and the Ammonites, and the Ashdodites heard the walls of Jerusalem were being restored, and the gaps were beginning to close, that they become very angry. And all of them conspired to come and attack Jerusalem and create confusion. Nevertheless, he done what? Made our prayers known to God, and because of them, we set watch against them. Did he say that he was the only one praying there? We need people. We need to sound that alarm. When we need the trumpeter to blow. I'm telling you what, one night I was on my very last, right before revival, we come out here for a prayer meeting on Saturday night. If it hadn't been for them men lifting me back up, I was at the end. The world I was like Brother Leslie said, I was an emotional punching bag. Satan had been working on me. But because of them men praying for me, they lifted me back up and got me going again, and that's what I wanted you to know. It says right here in His Word that nevertheless we made our prayer to our God, and because of them, we set watch day and night. What only do we have to do after we pray? We have to set watch. The thing about it is, God will bring what you need to be doing. If you'll have a relationship with Him, if you'll get in tune, He'll let you know. But He'll also give you that discernment to know that you're up against what? You're up against Satan in this life. But He is going to give you victory, as we sang of before. The Jewish people had a mind to work, and that's where we at right here. We got to have the mindset of It ain't just gravy, people. We got to work. We got to learn. We got to study. We got to get with it. The gaps were being closed. We'll go back to that scripture. It says, Jerusalem was being restored, and the gaps were beginning to close. You think about it in this church setting right here, or you can think about it in your family setting, however you want to look at it. When we start closing the gaps, when our people come together, you think Satan likes that? He don't. I'm going to go ahead and tell you he don't like it. When the gaps begin to close, the walls begin to coming up, we protecting what is ours. We just talked about it in Sunday school this morning. If you was in Sunday school, you got a great lesson. God has promised us stuff, but how do we even know what those promises are if we don't read, we don't study, we don't get in tune with the Word? But the thing about it is, when we start coming together, closing gaps in our family, even your relationship with your spouse, your children, Satan don't like that. He wants discord. He wants what? Confusion. He is the author of what? Confusion. Nehemiah stays steady just as we must. Satan will use any vessel he can cause discouragement. Your children, your spouse, your work environment. The work environment is something else I want to touch on. You know, I hear guys tell me all the time, and I use this excuse for years, man. With a prison where I work, you know, everybody talks nasty and just the people are nasty, and I just can't. What you think Nehemiah was enduring in Persia? That ain't his people. He was out of place. You don't think that was an ungodly work environment? I guarantee it was. But you know what? He endured it because what? God was in his heart. He knew that he was going to be okay. And we can do it too. We can go to our job environment through prayer, just like Nehemiah went back to restore these walls. We can restore walls at our work. We can build walls for God. We can build up our own Jerusalem at work. Don't use excuses. Use discernment and use prayer. But anyway, the walls were torn down and the city was left ravaged for over 100 years. These people lived a life of defeat and were easily discouraged. You know, people, when we go out here in the world, or we go to our family, we ain't even got to go in the world. I can go right there in my family. A lot of times when we're trying to minister to people, we're trying to tell them to have faith, man, it's going to get better. Sometimes it's easier to preach it than live it, ain't it? But the thing about it is, guys, we got to do everything in prayer. Prayer and supplication. But through Nehemiah's great leadership, the people actively looked for God in all situations. He continued in prayer, opposition, but they encouraged the people to be steady in the word and defend themselves. That's what I'm encouraging you today, guys. Be steady in the words. Verse 19, he says, "Then I said to the nobles, the rulers, and the rest of the people, the work is great and extensive, and we are separated far from another on the wall. Whenever you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us there. Our God will fight for us." You know, just as the Jewish people, they rallied to the trumpeter. If you'll let somebody know, and when the best alarm system we have at Walkerville Baptist Church, Miss Stephanie is on the button of it. All you got to do is text her, email her. I think she even does Twitter. I ain't sure. That tells you how much I know about technology. I know nothing about technology, but I say all this for you to know. There's resources. There's no need to panic. We have the resources right here at Walkerville. If you're defeated, if your walls are torn down, We have resources. We have people that would love to pray. We have people right now that will stand beside you. Come right down here to this altar. As I spoke of before, I know what it's like to have knots on your head. I know what it's like to make bad decisions. But I'm telling you today, just as Nehemiah went into this city to rebuild it, he went into that city with a plan. We have to have a plan too. When we we defeated, we got to have a plan, but most of all, we got to what? We got to surrender that plan to God and walk as He'd have us walk. The final thought I'm going to leave you with is, there's no need in any of us panicking. There's people here. There's resources available. Are we going to suffer consequences when we make stupid decisions? Of course we are. Can people come along beside you to make those consequences a whole lot easier? Just hold your hand so you can pick your head up a little bit? Yes, they are. Are they people going to talk about your business? Probably so. I ain't going to lie to you. But you know what? When they're talking about my business, they're leaving somebody else alone. So you just let them talk. You know that you're right. You know that you're doing just as Nehemiah. You're going back and you're building your walls. You're protecting yourself. You use the strength of the church. You use the strength of the community. All these resources. And we're going to go ahead and close. I don't feel like there's any more to it. I'm going to ask Terry to play us a song to close. And I'm telling you right now, if y'all will stand, if you're defeated this morning,
I don't want to hear anymore.
if you're lost and you don't even have a clue how to get to know Jesus, come down. Come down to the altar this morning. If you won't come down, meet us in the parking lot, but talk to somebody. Don't let Sambalat have your life. Don't give in to sin, them old memories. Put that stuff away. We empower sin when we let it come in. We're going to build up walls. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, you can think of it as you might. If you're doing something for the Lord, you can go ahead and expect there's going to be trials and tribulations along the way. Because if you're doing it of consequence for the Lord, Sambalat ain't going to have it. Or he's going to try not to have it. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you this victory. We sung about that victory. But you got to give it to the Lord. Go ahead, Tim.